So the Cula-Saccaka Sutta, this is another sutta similar to the ones we've been looking at the last few weeks. The Vajragota Sutta, the Anurata Sutta, and the Nigantha Sutta. Those relate to how the Buddha teaches when confronted with the great existential questions. And the important thing there is that he doesn't give those any consideration on purpose, because they don't deserve any consideration within the framework of the Dhamma. And he points directly to the teachings, whether it's the Four Noble Truths. And a similar thread in these other three suttas is a teaching on impermanence and the five clinging aggregates, which is also a teaching on anatta. So it's a teaching on the three marks of existence, which is really the insight that is gained through developing the Eightfold Path is a very specific insight into the three marks of existence. And any other insight that's sought to some other phenomena is really outside the context of the Buddha's Dhamma. And so same thing with the existential questions. They just don't deserve an answer within his framework. In this sutta, it's the scenario is slightly different, but it's a very interesting scene. But the response is the same. Let me just read the introduction. In the Cula-Saccaka Sutta, the Buddha is confronted by Saccaka, a follower of Nigantha Nataputta, the local leader of a Jain sect. And that Nigantha Nataputta was a rather well-known spiritual leader at the time. Saccaka is accompanied by a group of approximately 500 Licchavis. So this also points to again, I use the word loosely, the spiritual environment during the Buddha's time. Many people spent their free time, their entertainment time, in spiritual pursuit. But there wasn't a lot of other things to do. There wasn't any 24-hour news cycle or the internet or Facebook or any of those things. You were either there wasn't a lot of distractions, except, as you can see, even during the Buddha's time, so-called spiritual or religious practice became the distraction. It was a way of coping with the stress of the world rather than recognizing and eliminating our own causes of stress. The Licchavis were a society ruled by a religious oligarchy. Saccaka was a well-respected Jain teacher known for using intense philosophical rhetoric and debate to show his superior knowledge. So that, again, this debate, you've all seen those pictures of the Tibetan monks with that screaming and the hollering and the jumping around and doing all that. You know what I'm talking about? No. It's very common in certain modern Buddhist schools. The debate and winning debate was much more important and has become much more important than actually developing the Dhamma. And so it was during that time. If you could win a debate by whatever means you used, it led credence to what you were teaching, no matter what it was. And so it was an important thing for people to do. Saccaka tells the Licchavis in attendance, there was no contemplative or leader or one who claims to be an arahant, a rightly self-awakened one, who would not quiver or break out in sweat when engaged with me in debate. He hasn't come across Siddhartha Gautama yet. This is the sutta. One morning, Venerable Assaji, one of the monks of the Buddhist Sangha, was in Vesali on his alms round. Saccaka noticed Assaji and recognized him as a follower of Gautama, the contemplative, the Buddha. Master Assaji, how does Gautama the contemplative generally instruct his disciples? Agavasana, which is he's calling Assaji by his family name. Agavasana, Gautama, the rightly self-awakened one, instructs his disciples in a general way as follows. Form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, mental fabrications are impermanent, and consciousness is impermanent. Being impermanent, form is not self, feelings are not self, perceptions are not self, mental fabrications are not self, and consciousness is not self. Meaning these aggregates, again, I'm referring to the five clinging aggregates, referring to anatta, referring to impermanence, because all these aggregates are impermanent. And so these aggregates that we would normally use to say, well, this is a self, the Buddha is stating very clearly, or in this case, what's his name, is saying these things don't constitute a self. All impermanent phenomena is not a self. In short, the 5 clinging aggregates are impermanent and so not a self. Agavasana, this is the general way that Gautama, the rightly self-awakened one, instructs his disciples. Agavasana says, what an awful thing to hear, Master Asaji, that Gautama the contemplative teaches this sort of thing. Perhaps someday we can meet with Gautama the contemplative and change his evil view. Of course, it's an evil view because it doesn't reconcile with his views. It's the only reason why it's evil. A short while later, a group of Licchavis, about 500 in total, were gathered at a meeting hall. Saccaka addressed the group, come with me to debate Gautama the contemplative. If he takes the same position with me that he does with his followers, I will thrash him about statement by statement. I will amuse myself with the Buddha. The Licchavis, again, think about the arrogance and where that type of arrogance comes from. We know it comes out of ignorance. And yet, Saccaka's whole spiritual practice is rooted on validating his own arrogance, isn't it? And doing it through his practice. The Licchavis, knowing both teachers, were mixed as to what to expect. Some thought Saccaka would prevail. Some felt the Buddha would prevail. They followed Saccaka to seek out the Buddha. They found the Buddha in the great forest. After exchanging courteous greetings, Saccaka sat to one side. Some of the Licchavis were respectful to the Buddha, clasping their hands in front of them, and some remained silent. Saccaka addressed the Buddha. I would like to question Master Gautama on a certain point if you would grant me the favor of an answer. Ask as you see fit, Agavasana. In general, what is your instructions to your disciples? The Buddha says, I instruct my disciples in this general way. Form is impermanent, feelings are impermanent, perceptions are impermanent, mental fabrications are impermanent, and consciousness is impermanent. As such, form is not self, feelings are not self, perceptions are not self, mental fabrications are not self, and consciousness is not self. Why are these aggregates not self? Anybody? Everyone! Wow. This is really working out here pretty well. I mean, that's it. And that really is the essence of the Dhamma. If it's impermanent, how could it be me? Or at least how could it be me trying to establish a permanent, lasting self? It can't be. And so when we can truly penetrate the understanding of impermanence of all things, including, and most importantly, this 5 clinging aggregates that I use to describe myself, it's the end of stress. When we truly understand that. Because if it's impermanent, it can't be a self. Why worry about it? Why take anything personal? If everything that we would take personal is always in a constant state of change, another way of saying that is always in a constant state of becoming, why even consider it? It doesn't matter. It's not me. And it does not affect me, save for how I let it affect me or how I attach myself to it. Remember that how the Buddha would describe the problem of dukkha is that we join with dukkha. We join with our suffering, we join with our stress through ignorance, through not understanding the 3 marks of existence. And so you see the common thread through these last 4 teachings, and really all of the Buddha's Dhamma, but specifically these 4. All of these teachings, as the Buddha is trying to change someone's direction of their thinking, or in this case, just describe a pure Dhamma, he always relates it to the 3 marks of existence, because that's the insight that we hope to gain. If it's impermanent, how could it be a self? You remember, those of you that are on retreat, and I've talked about it here, the Nataputta Sutta that we always go through on retreat. The Buddha says exactly the same thing. If it's impermanent, it's not a self. All impermanent phenomena, all impermanent phenomena are not self. This, in a general way, is how I instruct my disciples. A simile occurs to me, Master Gautama. Any seed that grows and spreads is dependent on the earth. In the same way, any individual with form, in connection with form, taking sustenance from form, produces merit or demerit. Any individual with feelings, taking sustenance from feelings, produces merit or demerit. Taking sustenance meaning, and the Buddha would often talk about ignorance being the food, the sustenance that we feed ourselves in order to continue our ignorance. There needs to be something to sustain ignorant views, wrong views. There needs to be something direct and determined to sustain stress. And that is what our part in continuing this stressful existence rooted in ignorance. That's where we come in. And it's also where we can get out by recognizing this, by understanding this process. I'll say it again. Any individual with feelings, taking sustenance from feelings, produces merit or demerit. Any individual with perceptions, with mental fabrications, with consciousness, taking sustenance from perceptions or fabrications or consciousness, I need Lorna here to tell me to slow down. Consciousness produces merit or demerit. Agavasana, are you saying form is myself, feeling is myself, perception is myself, fabrications are myself, consciousness is myself? And of course he is. When you are describing, using these 5 clinging aggregates to describe yourself, of course you see them as yourself. This form is me. My perceptions rooted in ignorance, even though, well, you might not be aware of it, even though they're causing stress, you hang on to them because they're your perceptions, which leads to mental fabrications or false assumptions about who you are in relation to the world you live in, and that ongoing aggregate of consciousness, which is ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance. It's not some grand cosmic consciousness. Yes, Master Gautama, I'm saying that form is myself, feeling is myself, perception is myself, fabrications are myself, and consciousness is myself, as do all those that came with me. So there's an immediate dichotomy between what the Buddha is teaching and what other people believe. And the Buddha, that is where the Buddha's directness and gentle clarity comes in. And this is why he consistently would not bring anything else into his Dhamma. He knew what it was, he knew what it takes to awaken, and he knew that it was a complete and pure Dhamma. There was no reason to embellish it or accommodate it in any way. And he understood that to do so would be only giving in to the ignorance that was around him. And the only reason you would do that is to make people feel good in their suffering.
Did he actually believe that?
The Buddha?
No.
Agavasana and those, the ones that are...
Yeah.
Yes, that was...
Were they just being contrarian to... because of the debate aspect?
Oh, I see what you're saying. That was their belief.
The Jains believe.
Yes, and there's still the Jains are still a well-established religion still today. And there's some minor similarities between what the Jains teach and continue to teach and what the Buddha taught in a general way, but this obviously isn't one of them. Mm-hmm. But their overriding belief nearly at every stage contradicts or is dichotomous to what the Buddha is teaching. And this is just another example. So yes, they believe this. And of course that is the common problem and rooted in ignorance, that this is who I am. And so once I insist that this is who I am, and this is a permanent and fixed self, then I need to create these strategies, remember, rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, in order to make sense of this. And even to continue my view of self, meaning I'll now create scenarios of the possibilities of ongoing life forever and ever and ever and ever, which again, that contradicts what the Buddha is saying, because the Buddha is teaching us that everything is in a process of becoming. And how do we understand that? We need to be present so that we can mindfully observe it from the point of view of right view. Is that clear? And again, that relates directly to the 3 marks of existence again. Thank you, Dave. It was a great question. Just to lead to what I'm about to say, as do all those that came with me. In parentheses, Saccaka includes the Licchavis here to gain their support in his debate with the Buddha. I mean, that's a common debating term. You want to appeal to your audience to get them on your side. Anybody that's what you want to do in debate. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. You want people to follow you, so at the end, you're right. And it really doesn't matter at that point whether your argument, whether your debate has any real value. Now the purpose is to win the debate, to show the Buddha what a fool he is. Very well. I will cross-question you on your statements. What do you think, Agavasana? Would a noble king, let's see the word, would a noble king wield power in their domain to execute those that deserve execution, or to banish those that deserve banishment, or to tax or fine those that deserve to be taxed or fined? Is such a noble king in control of his domain? This is really, it's such a great way of making this point. Yes, Master Gautama, a noble king would be able to control his domain in this manner. Well, Agavasana, when you say that form is self, do you have power over that form? Can you have your form be any different than it is? The point the Buddha is making, if I think, if this is me, I must have control over it. I can make it be anything that I want. I can make it last forever. I can make it be free of sickness, aging, and death. I can make it turn into a tree or float around or do anything else. But since I can't, true useful logic in the framework of the Eightfold Path says, how could I claim this to be a self? I have no control over it. And again, with the rest of the aggregates. Saccaka could not answer and so remained silent. Again, the Buddha asked Saccaka, well, Agavasana, when you say that form is self, do you have the power over that form? Can you have your form be any different than it is? Again, Saccaka could not answer and remained silent. Agavasana, you have engaged me in this debate. It will be to your detriment to not answer. I will ask you one more time. When you say that form is self, do you have power over that form? Can you have your form be any different than it is? So this is another really important point to make here. To some, it could sound like the Buddha is being mean to hold Agavasana or Saccaka up like this, especially in the front of 500 people. Now remember, Saccaka is the one that began this debate, and it would be cruel at this point for the Buddha to say, oh, okay, you can believe that and go on his way, because there's over 500 people that are here to learn the Dhamma. And the cruelest thing that anyone could do in the framework, and the Buddha certainly understood this, within the Dhamma is to misrepresent the Dhamma. This goes in line with the last three suttas. We touched on this here too. So it is out of great compassion, but not just great compassion. It takes the wisdom of an awakened human being married with that compassion to have a true effect. Remember how the Buddha described himself prior to awakening as an unawakened bodhisattva. He was a human being filled with great compassion, but lacking the wisdom of Four Noble Truths. Now he has it. Now he can truthfully and directly teach the Dhamma. Agavasana answers, no, Master Gautama. Listen closely to what I am saying, Agavasana, and answer only after you have paid attention. You really got to focus on this. Your answer is inconsistent with your statements. You also said that feelings are self and perceptions are self, and that mental fabrications are self and consciousness is self. Can your feelings be different than as they occur? Can your perceptions or your fabrications or your consciousness be any different than as they occur? Of course, they can't be. Once they've occurred, they've occurred. No, Master Gautama. Then again, listen closely to what I am saying, Agavasana, and answer only after you have paid attention. Your answer is inconsistent with your statements. Is form impermanent or constant? Impermanent, Master Gautama. And is that which is impermanent stressful or easeful? It's stressful, Master Gautama. Likewise, are feelings, perceptions, mental fabrications, consciousness impermanent or constant? They are impermanent, Master Gautama. And is that which is impermanent easeful or stressful? It is stressful, Master Gautama. And is it fitting to regard what is inconstant, stressful, subject to change as, this is me, this is mine, this is myself, this is what I am? No, it's not, Master Gautama. So what do you think, Agavasana? When one holds to stress, is attached to stress, or as the Buddha would often say, has joined with stress, and thinks of stress as this is mine, this is myself. Now he's relating the aggregates to stress. This is mine, this is myself, this is what I am. Would he understand stress or be able to be free of stress? In other words, if you are joined and identified yourself as stress, how can you be free of stress? No, Master Gautama, you can't. Agavasana, don't you hold to stress? Aren't you attached to stress? And don't you think of stress as this is mine, this is myself, This is what I am. It's the same way the Buddha could have said, you are attached to your wrong views, because it's your wrong views that lead to stress. But then he would be touching on the Eightfold Path directly in right view. Yes, Master Gautama, please tell me how a disciple of Master Gautama develops this instruction to end all doubt, to end all questions, and to be fearless, and this is so important, and to be fearless and independent of others. Fear might arise that you're listening to someone else and you're afraid that they might be right. So maybe I should dabble with what they're saying too. Fearless and independent of others. Again, that need to reconcile all, and this is just as common today, maybe even more common today, to reconcile all religious and spiritual and new age and any kind of belief into one cosmic belief system, rather than being fearless and independent. And this leads to actually taking refuge. Tomorrow my talk is going to be on taking refuge because it relates to this. Taking true refuge in the Dhamma is understanding that a human being awakened, taking refuge in the Buddha, he taught his Dhamma. He taught it fearless and independent of any other teaching, and it's still here today. And then we take refuge in a well-focused sangha, which we are so fortunate to have here. To end all doubt, to end all questions, to be fearless and independent of others and their teachings. Agavasana, when a disciple of mine develops right view through the Eightfold Path, they then see any form, past, present, or future, internal or external, common or sublime, near or far, clearly as form has come to be. Let me say that again. They then see any form, past, present, or future, internal or external, common or sublime. The Buddha is really talking about different scenarios that we might create in our minds to establish a self. Common or sublime, near or far, clearly as form has come to be. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. This is not what I am. Referring again to the 3 marks of existence in the 5 clinging aggregates. To see this vehicle that we use to describe an ongoing self as all factors of it are impermanent, and so it can't be a self. And so that leads directly to the understanding of what the Buddha meant by using the term anatta, that all the things that I've used to describe myself as a self do not constitute a self. Those views are rooted in wrong views, rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths. That's the true meaning of anatta. So again, the Buddha is not discounting a self in its entirety. That would be a wrong view. He's not saying that there's no such thing as a self. He's saying simply that the views that we're holding to describe a self to ourselves are rooted in ignorance. They are not a self. Let go of the views. Just like he said to Vacchagotta, it's your questions that are confusing you. Let go of the questions. Vacchagotta's questions were confusing him because they were rooted in wrong views. Let go of the questions is the same as letting go of the views. The difficulty is letting go of the views, isn't it? I mean, that's really what we all struggle with. How can I let go? That feeling that often comes up, and we talk about it here often, of annihilation. If I take this path to its natural conclusion, what will happen to me? There'll be nothing left of me. Well, that's that same belief. And it's hanging on to that shred of self-reference that blocks us from truly awakening. Not willing to let go of somewhat refined wrong views. And I'm meaning somewhat refined is because we maybe have let go of all the gross views that it's easy to see aren't a self, but that last one that is directly tied to 5 clinging aggregates is the one that we can't let go of. It's that last final wrong view that we have to be willing and fearless and independent enough to make that, I'm not going to say it's a leap. It's not really a leap, but to really just to make that decision. I often refer to engaging in the Dhamma takes wholehearted engagement. We have to be, at some point at least, we have to become fully committed to the Buddha's Dhamma without the need to mix anything in that we would use to continue to establish wrong views. What the Buddha's talking about. The Buddha continues, and these are probably his words are much better than the words I just used. Through right view, My disciples know that any feeling, any perception, any mental fabrication, or any consciousness, ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance, past, present, or future, internal or external, common or sublime, near or far, clearly as form has come to be, that this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, this is not what I am. In other words, that person has now developed profound understanding of five clinging aggregates, what also means, remember how the Buddha describes right view as a profound and penetrative understanding of dukkha. It's the same thing. A profound and penetrative understanding of five clinging aggregates is the same as a profound and penetrative understanding of dukkha. The five clinging aggregates is the phrase or term that the Buddha uses to describe the ongoing, seemingly personal experience of suffering. It's the vehicle for suffering. And as long as we are joined with our suffering, as long as we are holding on to these aggregates as this is me, this is mine, this is who I am, we are going to continue wrong views, and we are going to continue to experience stress and suffering in our lives. Agavasana, this is how my disciples carry my message and my instruction to end all doubt, to end all questions, to be fearless and independent of others and their teachings. Master Gautama, how does one complete the path to end all defilements, to lay down the burden and the fetter of becoming further ignorant? How does one become an arahant, released through right understanding? This is the complete instruction on the Dhamma, although it's rather succinct. Agavasana, when anyone through right view knows that form, feeling, perceptions, fabrications, or consciousness, whether past, present, future, internal or external, common or sublime, that this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, this is not what I am, through lack of clinging to ignorant views as sustenance. Again, it's ignorant views that maintain. Remember the Loka Sutta thing, where the Buddha states that karma is the field, consciousness is the seed, and craving is the moisture. That's what he's talking about. It requires constant maintenance. The eighth factor, independent origination. It takes constant maintenance to maintain ignorance. And that's really the underlying stress in all of our lives, because underlying our lives is this continual striving to maintain five clinging aggregates, a personal experience of what's occurring in life, rather than understanding that all things arise and pass away. There's nothing to be taken personal. Not one thing, because it's impermanent. This is not me. This is not mine. So when I'll conclude this in a second, but a very powerful and practical teaching then, and this leads to when we talked about restraint, when things are arising in our moment by moment life, in our mundane lives, and we're starting to feel stress arise, it's at that moment that we can remind ourselves, wait a minute, this is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. This has nothing to do with me. Whether it's a negative stress-inducing experience or a positive, whether we found out we just won the lottery. And I'm hoping one day to do it, just to try it out, if I can actually say, this is not me, this is not mine.
How did you get the chance?
What do you think, Agavasana? You think I can do it? No matter what's occurring, if we're taking it personal, if we're identifying with anything in the impermanent world, we're joining with suffering. So we can have the most awful day, or maybe a terrible experience, maybe an argument with a loved one. Those are always, those are the highest stress things we can do often. But remember, this is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. Or we get that great job that we've been after. We finally heard it. It's okay to be excited and feel good about it, but to not identify it, to not use it to build up a self-referential view. Is that clear? So it doesn't mean that we are detached from life as life unfolds. In fact, it means that we are fully immersed in our life as our life unfolds, because we're not taking it personal. Because we're simply able, our minds are well concentrated enough, and we have developed the refined mindfulness of the Eightfold Path to see things through right view. This is wonderful, and it's not me. And in that way, no matter what occurs in life, I'm not going to say is wonderful, but no matter what occurs in our life has deep and profound meaning because we are present with it. We're not seeing it from a self-reflective view. We're not seeing it from a conditioned view rooted in the past, or we're not seeing it from a conditioned mind hoping to achieve something or acquire something. It's simply what's occurring. Through their right effort, they have ended the defilements, greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. They have ended the defilements, laid down the burden. I love that line, because when you really, stress is a burden, isn't it? Maintaining the self is stress. Maintaining the 5 clinging aggregates is stress. Maintaining the self in that way, a self-referential self, is a burden. It's something that we can lay down. We don't have to carry it around. That's the true meaning of liberation. I am liberated from my own wrong views, and I see things clearly. And you know how you tell the difference between an awakened one and one who isn't? How? You can't. There's no way to know except you might notice a calm and peaceful countenance about them. You might notice that they don't get in arguments or engage in a lot of rhetoric either. Not a lot of it around. Through their right effort, they had ended the defilements, laid down the burden and the fetter of becoming further ignorant. They have completed the path and are released through right understanding or right view. Released, they are endowed with unsurpassed right view, unsurpassed practice, and unsurpassed release. There's nothing that can threaten this at this point. Release, they honor and respect the Tathagata, the Buddha, in this manner. The Buddha teaches the Dhamma for awakening to 4 noble truths. The Buddha teaches the Dhamma to develop restraint. This is not me, this is not mine. The Buddha teaches the Dhamma for developing tranquility. The ultimate goal. When the Buddha describes the quality of an awakened human being's mind, how does he describe it? Tranquil, calm. Nothing magical or mystical. He's not describing a person that can travel through the cosmos at will or bilo or do anything. Their mind is calm. Their mind is tranquil. They are at peace. The Buddha teaches the Dhamma for ending samsara or ending ignorance. The Buddha teaches the Dhamma for complete unbinding from wrong views. Saccaka then said to the Buddha, "It is we, Master Gautama, who are insolent, who are reckless, in that we construed that Master Gautama could be attacked statement by statement. May Master Gautama, together with a community of monks, acquiesce to my offer of tomorrow's meal." The Buddha acknowledged Saccaka with his silence. The next day, a lavish meal was prepared by the Licchavis for the Buddha and his sangha. Saccaka himself served the Buddha, and upon completion of the meal said, "Master Gautama, may the merits of this gift be exclusively for the happiness of the donors." Agavasana, what has been given, now this is really important too. Agavasana, what has been given to you, not without passions, not without aversions, not without delusion, that will be for the donors. Whatever has come to me without passion. In other words, the Buddha is saying, I wasn't seeking these honors. I wasn't seeking the gifts. I wasn't seeking this lavish meal. That's for those that are still stuck in the passion. Remember the fire discourse. Whatever has come to me without passion, without aversion. So any offering to an awakened human being, to the Buddha, if it's going to be a true offering, the only thing that an awakened human would want is to see a passionless, a human being who has developed the path and is no longer stuck in wrong views. There's no passion for self-reference left. Remember, again, the fire discourse. Without passion, without aversion, without delusion, free of ignorant views, that will be for you. That last line, if you're doing this from a right view, then every one of your actions, every one of your thoughts, words, and deeds are in accordance and framed by the Eightfold Path. That is for me, meaning the Buddha, but it's for you, most importantly. And the Buddha will not accept as an awakened human being, he won't accept a gift otherwise. That if that gift is rooted in ignorance, he don't want it. Good English, huh? Why? Because if I accept, again, as a Buddha, if I accept a gift that is rooted in ignorance, whatever that gift might be, it might be a so-called spiritual teaching, it might be an animal sacrifice, which was common, it could be a lavish meal that is meant to impress. I don't want it. Because if I take it, I'm increasing your suffering by approving of it. In every instance, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Look at how the Buddha lived for 45 years, the last 45 years of his life. And also remember, if he got tired of this Dhamma stuff, he could have went back to his father kingdom at any time. But he certainly could have established himself, if he wanted to, as the world's greatest teacher by continually seeking lavish gifts and all that would come along with that. He could have put on fancy clothes, as he would often say, and sleep in high beds. He never did any of it for his entire life, except on very rare occasions when it was almost like a state visit. He went out and got his alms bowl every day. He put on 3 robes made of rags every day. Well, he had 3 robes made of rags. He put 1, 2, or 3, depending on the temperature. He slept on the ground. He could have slept, again, he could have been sleeping on high beds with a roof over his head. Sometimes he did. But he lived a life free of any essence of this is me, this is mine, this is myself. He was free of the burden of 5 clinging aggregates. That's the end of the sutta. Thank you. So just so you know, those of you who are going on retreat, I'm thinking of finishing the retreat with this sutta. We'll see how that goes. But I think you can see why it's a fitting end to a retreat. Any questions? And I got to be somewhat honest. My eyes are getting a little worse, so it's hard for me to see any kind of expression. So I'm thinking that you're all smiling. So I'll just go along with that and keep that level of. I don't think it's ignorance. Any questions related to the sutta? And we'll go around the room. Ron, good to see you tonight.
Yeah, I was thinking of that process of applying that phrase, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, this is not who. I would start out with applying it in real blatant situations, usually, as you said, in high stress situations. And yeah, those may be hard to get over that threshold of this is not mine. And then later on, it just becomes whenever you see that stress, it should be that little trigger where you think, now things are getting interesting.
Yeah.
Does this fit? Does this meet? And then I wonder, okay, how long is this going to last? How long is this going to take to get to the bottom of this?
In that way, Ananda, it really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you maintain a wholehearted engagement.
Yeah.
And it really gets down to that refined nature of seeing not quite how to phrase it. It's of seeing that whatever is occurring is not me. And again, that's why I call wrong views self-reflective views. You don't see yourself in anything anymore. And then there's no acquisition, and because there's no acquisition, there's no competition. Whatever's in your bowl is more than enough. And imagine living a life that way. That no matter, and again, this takes away. You could be the most wealthiest person in the world. We all know people that had. I certainly know many when I was in the contracting business. Many people with great wealth, and they seemed miserable all the time. It was just never enough. We all have that kind of feeling if we're stuck in self-referential views, because the self-referential view is never satisfied. But when we realize this is not me, when that little bowl is enough, then it's enough. And then if people lavish all kinds of things on you, like a great, fantastic meal in my honor, we don't attach ourselves to it. It doesn't affect us. It doesn't give rise to passion. It's just another nice meal with maybe more than one bowl there. But it doesn't change who we are. We maintain a tranquil mind. David, good to see you tonight.
Kind of continue with what Ron was saying.
Mhm.
I like the imagery of this, how they, from an island to the ocean, gradual, and that's how your practice develops, and that's how your insight to the remarks develops.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all of a sudden, all the time. With some of these suttas where 500 people, they all got it.
Yeah.
It's a gradual, and there's no rush because you're certainly better than where you started.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had that thought. And then the other one, this is more about the sutta. This is one of those where Ananda wasn't present.
Yeah.
And in reading, to be honest, I read a lot of things. I'll jump into just like a Wikipedia version of it. And it's, it was a schoolyard Dhamma smackdown. You really, it wasn't so gentle. You presented much more gentle. But, Saka was being insulting, and the Buddha wasn't so gentle. And I wonder, with Ananda not being there, I wonder if it's how it was relayed is different because he wasn't there.
He was writing notes.
During the first council, when they recounted this, it was first Ananda that recounted all the suttas that he could, and then there was input from other arahants that were there.
Oftentimes, Ananda would wait. The sutta begins. It tell that he was there.
Yep. Yeah.
And in this one, he wasn't. And I was like, Buddha's being pretty feisty here.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is
normally
happened
the last
early-
2 or
early
3 where he was much more gentle, dealing with a wanderer or a sangha member. This guy was like kind of like a gunslinger.
Yep.
In your
Again,
face.
very common during his time too, though. So the Buddha was well aware of that. That this is how, and that intense debate was part of their practice, and again, it continues to this day.
In
It's
another
one.
sutta, I think with the same person. In the end, the sutta ends that the Jain teacher leaves spitting hot blood.
Yeah.
In this one,
Really stuck down.
in this one, he's sweating and he's beaten.
Yeah.
And in this telling of it, the Buddha takes his robe off and says, "I'm not sweating."
Yeah. I'm cool.
That's just very different.
Yeah.
I'm cool.
Yeah. I thought the imagery might be a little bit too much and distracting. So
I liked it.
It's real. Yeah.
Anyway, it's real. It's like,
It is.
This guy came with 500 people, and he was going to, show the Buddha up. And like it or not, he's got his message and
Yeah.
confident in it.
And the to me, the important thing is that even in the Buddha's directness, even in that imagery of "I'm cool," he's doing it out of great compassion. He's not doing it to prove how right he is. He wants to show that in a direct way that these views just don't fit my Dhamma. And again, he's not trying. They continue to they contribute to stress, but he's not concerned about gaining. He's more concerned about teaching. I was going to say he's not concerned about gaining followers. He certainly wanted people to take up his Dhamma, but he did it out of great compassion. He had no need for all the great followers. So, thank you for your observations. It's great. Mary, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you, John. I'm looking forward to your retreat, and I enjoyed the sutta. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. Helen, good to see you tonight.
Thank you. It's good to be here. The sutta made me think of one of my former employees. I got a T-shirt for her that said, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right."
That's good.
Oh, because she always had, always wanted to have the last word on justifying her point of view.
Yeah.
And we could joke around about it. But yeah, there are those people who are, it's more important to be seen as right than to actually be right.
Yeah.
And I see that as a direct link to the ego. That's what it's all about. And then I also was thinking about, we had this great aunt, Aunt Jain, and she lived an incredible life. But one of the things that she would do at Christmas time, she had 56 or more nieces and nephews, great nieces and nephews. She kept count. I think I was 56.
Oh, yes.
But she would prepare these bags of gifts for each of the families, and they would be things that people had given her. And it could be anything from a little dish to roll-on deodorant, whatever it was. It was this grab bag of things that she would just make sure that everybody had something.
Wow.
And so I think when people were giving her things, she was accepting them with the intent of paying it forward somewhere else. And so that was her graceful way of accepting gifts and then gifting them on to others.
That's just beautiful.
Yeah, she was pretty incredible.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Diane, good to see you tonight.
I'm thankful to be here, thankful for teaching, and thank everyone for being on.
Bonnie, good to see you.
See you too. Yeah, I have to let go of some of the layers. I guess I wrestle with the idea of, well, I try not to take it so literally and understand about the attachment, but just when it's not me, not mine, and then I don't have to be responsible for, it's sort of like, I don't want to get, not answered by the Buddha, but if I would ask a question about, like, maybe how does he see responsibility in how we treat others?
Yeah.
I mean, because there's almost like if you're not following the Eightfold Path and you're just hearing this stuff, it's sort of cavalier. Well, it's not me, it's not mine, it's your reaction, it's your response, it's not me. So, and I think there's balance, like anything, to be in the middle, but that's sort of what I'm wrestling with.
Yeah, so it is the Eightfold Path that guides all of our behavior, and he references it here. He talks about an awakened one has developed the Eightfold Path, developed right view through the Eightfold Path, so that even in that way, taking responsibility is not a self-reflective thing. It's part of our Dhamma practice. So the most people, when they start developing the Dhamma, if they're doing it within the framework of the Eightfold Path, the only way to do it is through the Eightfold Path, they'll recognize right speech is probably the first foray into seeing self-referential actions and views. So it is, in that way, you could say that the Eightfold Path is religious in that it teaches morality and ethics, but it's really not it's not, I'm not being moral and ethical because I might get punished otherwise. The only way to take true responsibility for who I am is through the mindfulness that's developed through the Eightfold Path, because then in every thought, ultimately, in every thought, word, and deed, I'm remaining harmless to myself and others. And there's so much, the great freedom of the Eightfold Path, when you finally realize that, is that you're no longer second guessing yourself or wondering how you should be in any situation, because you act accordingly. You act from right view rather than from wrong view. So it's wrong view that would cause someone to do things that are hurtful and not take responsibility, or try to not take responsibility. It's from right view and from a fully developed Eightfold Path that we take ultimate responsibility for everything in our lives. Thank you for bringing up that important point. Liz, good to see you.
Good to see you and good to be here. I think about that a lot too, that particular point, because, you know, if you've lived your life being hard on yourself, then being kind on yourself in a situation, kind to yourself in a certain situation, you kind of almost feel like you're letting yourself off the hook for something.
Yeah.
Because you're not no longer beating yourself up about it. And that's where I get kind of, I know it's twisted.
It's not, Liz.
I get hung up on that idea of, you know, be kind, be gentle to yourself. But what if you really did screw up? You know, like,
yeah,
you did the wrong thing, and then you have, you know, I mean, you make amends or whatever you need to do. But yeah, I do think about that a lot. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking is that, you know, the basis for so many religions is ego. You know,
it's wrong. Yeah, which is same as saying it's wrong view.
Yeah, it's just, you know. Anyway, that was just the other observation, but that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. It is just that, you know. It comes back to the framework of the Eightfold Path and seeing things clearly, and then acting accordingly. But along the way, one of the reasons why you always hear me say, "Be gentle with ourselves," that's probably the most common trait, that this self-flagellation, that we can beat ourselves up to becoming better somehow. That's the common Western belief, but it's you know, it's rather pervasive in our whole global society now. The first way to better yourself is first find out where you're wrong, beat yourself up a little bit. Maybe you can talk some other people into beating you up a little bit, and then you're going to be good to go. And that, well, but don't we commiserate? Yeah, it sounds like a good plan. And all that it does, every step of the way, you're just reinforcing wrong views. That's all that it does. Every time you judge yourself harshly, that's rooted in the wrong view, and it's reinforcing that view. When we recognize that we've done something that's hurtful towards others or towards ourselves, we do just what you said. It doesn't mean we don't take responsibility. The first practical thing is you acknowledge that you've done something wrong to someone by saying, I done wrong. But you can't beat yourself up over it. You're just going to keep doing it. You're just reinforcing that behavior. So it's at that point that you practice. It's at the point of saying, look, I'm sorry I did what I did. Then, right there, you practice restraint and you don't put it back on yourself. Because then you've done everything you can. And if you do it within the framework of the Eightfold Path, you'll learn from it rather than justify it in some way. Yeah, I shouldn't act that way, but that person really. Pardon me, Helen?
I said the power of the period.
Yeah.
Put it there at the end of that sentence and stop.
That's it. We're done with it. And we don't have to mess with it. We don't have to figure out where it came from. We recognize this is behavior. Why did I act like that? What did I do whatever I did that was wrong? I did it because my view was rooted in ignorance. I hope to not act like that anyway in the future by developing wisdom. That's all. That's the whole path. And that's why we do it. So we can live, as the Buddha said, we can live at peace in the world with a peaceful and tranquil mind.
Well, we do it because it perpetuates the self.
Yeah.
That's why we do it.
And we find all kinds of reasons to explain it away.
Whatever you've defined yourself as being, we do those things to perpetuate that definition.
Yeah. And if I don't have, if I'm no longer stuck in the wrong views, I'm liberated from the burden. It's not something that could even arise in a mind like that. That's why it's called a pure mind. An awakened mind is a pure mind, because none of the defilements are left in that mind. There's no greed, there's no aversion, there's no deluded thinking left in that mind for any type of aggressive behavior towards anyone or towards ourselves. It would be unthinkable in meaning that a mind wouldn't think of beating yourself up, just like an awakened mind wouldn't think of beating anybody else up. But an awakened mind might take it to the extreme of saying, I'm cool. I'm not sweating this one out, because it's the most compassionate thing to do, to be direct. In those situations, it really is the most loving thing we can do. Thank you. Boy, good stuff. Russ, good to see you tonight. We've missed you. How have you been?
Been good.
Good.
I'm just trying to focus in on being consistent with meditation. It's the big thing I got to focus on.
Yeah.
The most out of it. Sporadic.
Yeah.
But I think I do see effect of the classes and online and everything. One example is when I watch dramas on TV. Sometimes in situations wouldn't be something I would pick to watch, but I'm watching it, and I sit there and go, those people have such wrong views. But it's exciting. It's drama, right?
That's
They
right.
have right views. So I
Yeah.
things differently. You know, like I used to maybe enjoy somebody's acting crazy, but now I sit there and go, they just have no self-awareness. So I think it's evident.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that way. I don't think the Buddha channel would last very long. I think people would
You'd be surprised what
really
you
be
have.
distracted enough by that.
One more guy shaking the rock, you know. How many times you guys do that?
Did you see the episode where he was sitting under the tree? That was
Oh,
really
yeah.
good.
What was it? What was it?
No, I'm just, one week the Buddha's under the tree,
Oh,
next week he's on the rock.
And what's he doing? Well, good class. Okay, we'll be on retreat the end of this week, so there won't be any Thursday or Saturday class. But we'll be back next Tuesday with more of this silliness. Any other questions or comments on this? And just as a coming attractions, there's a great book out there by Bhikkhu Bodhi called The Great Disciples of the Buddha. And the stories are just fascinating. So I'm going to start incorporating those occasionally into our classes, just to tell the story of Ananda or Mahakassapa or Sariputta. They really are fascinating in how even the story about Kassapa, who was a second or third cousin from the Buddha. It's just remarkable. And what I really, in fact, I'll probably teach that first, because the interchange of an elderly Kassapa and an elderly Buddha, now at the end, they both know it's the end of their lives. And that is this great conversation. It tells so much. So that's coming attractions. You got to stay tuned for
He's
that.
also got really good YouTube.
Bhikkhu Bodhi?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's really quite good.
he is. Okay. We
We'll
will.
have movie night on retreat. YouTube
Yeah.
movie night on retreat.
We could do that on a Saturday night. All right, look, we'll finish with.
Oh, we don't.
It's supposed to be. Bring an umbrella, because it's supposed to be a little rainy this weekend. But that's all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the
supposed to
weather's not
rain.
gonna be very good.
That'll be good.
Friday, Thursday, Friday would be nice.
Oh, I got the wrong. Is it Thursday and Friday?
I saw it rain the whole time. But that's okay.
Yeah, I mean
Although
Your
the
umbrella.
hiking is nice to go on the trail.
Yeah.
Well, if the schedule is such that it's, we can move our sessions around. So if there's going to be some sunshine for 2 hours on 3 o'clock, we won't have a session then. Yeah, just so we can get out a little bit. Okay, we'll finish with metta as we always do. So find your relaxed meditative posture. And gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And again, take a moment to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class tonight. Peace.
Oh.